Hello fellow nerds. When it comes to model railroading, my favorite dive bar is somewhere between scratch building and kit bashing, and I usually kind of prefer the latter. There are so many good kits out there, and I really love the ones from long ago. Therefore, a question I ask a lot is, what's that kit? Welcome to Rust and HO Skate. Today's kit is a steam engine flat car load by Western Scale Models. The copyright is 2003, so only 20 years old. The kit is almost all white metal. The box would feel empty except for the weight of the instructions. Disappointed? No way. I've seen others build this model and it looks amazing. This one is HO Scale by Corbin Young from Tuolumne and South Fork Railway. I also love Lex Parker's work, though in the larger O scale, he does a fantastic job with color and weathering. Lex also has built this model as a standing engine and placed it in his stamp mill. I'm building this as a flat car load. Backstory is that one pessimistic prospector is selling his slightly outdated, but good condition, Ames Ironwork Royal Twin Cylinder to an optimistic mill startup. But back to my kit. There are 71 white metal castings along with brass rods and some strip wood. I was very impressed with the quality of the packaging. I liked the monochromatic logo and the clean white box. The castings are separated into small, sturdy, clear bags based on the steps of the build. I identified the first 2 bags and got ready to start cleaning. As with all white metal, there's a bit of work required to get the parts ready for assembly. I'm back to my ridiculous oversized file. However, I did break out the diamond needle file set for this really fine work. And I also used various grits of sandpapers from 150 grit to 4000. I honed all of the holes with drill bits of various sizes, and none of this was too tough. The connecting rods were a little bit delicate, but most of the other pieces were fine and I wasn't unlucky enough to break anything. We've all built a kit or two, or a Lego set, where we didn't follow the instructions at all. Not the case for this one. I read them numerous times, and I had no real heartburn, but I did struggle with one thing. The materials list, the written instructions, and the diagrams, and the photos, they were all on separate pages. I had to disassemble the instruction booklet so that I could spread out the relevant pages when I was working on a particular step. I'm picking at nits here, but why not just put the text, the diagram, and the photo on the same page? Was it a limitation of the self-publishing software from 25 years ago? In 2003, you might have used MS Word, but it was a bit clunky. Quark Express was the leader in the professional realm, but I doubt they used that. Adobe PageMaker was gaining market share, but it was expensive. Not to compare, but Brett Gallant of Sierra West was able to do this, and I think his instructions are better for it. But then again, I think Brett is an actual graphic artist, and maybe it's unfair to expect so much. I started with the frames, bases, and cylinders. After cleaning them, I washed them in soap and water, learning from past mistakes. And I secured them with carpet tape, and then I sprayed them with a little rattle can black. 2-part epoxy was suggested and thus used. I started with the stuffing box and then went to look up what exactly a stuffing box is. I managed to find a video of some guys checking the rings on a ship-sized stuffing box. Anyway, I added the cylinder heads and the valve chests and painted them with Tamiya metallic gray. I should have done this before assembly for a cleaner look, and with time and care I overcame my lack of foresight. Here's the paint marker that I used to top off the steam inlet ports, and here's the shot of me doing that work, just out of the camera's frame. YouTubing is hard. One of the reasons that you often see YouTubers separate the work from the filming and the talking is that it's very hard to do any two at the same time. Many choose to do the work and then show a static view and explain live what they just did off camera. That is much easier. What I'm trying is far more difficult. I'm trying to film the work, then I do the voice work later. This allows you to actually see what I'm doing as I explain it, but filming it with no cameraman is really hard. At first, this shot looks next level. a beautiful, subtle panning motion, until you realize it's just the camera falling off the tripod. So this is the shot of me gluing the cylinder assemblies to the frame. The next detail involved gluing a piece of wire. Whenever I'm attaching a wire to something, I like to drill the attachment hole deeper. I can then insert the wire a little further into the object, and that way I don't have to trust the glue as much. The piece that needed that piece of wire is a nice detail. On the side of the frame, it's called a valve block assembly. It's a very small casting, and this tiny wire is to represent the valve linkage. The wire inserts into the valve block and the other end into the valve chest. The first assembly was made of 7 parts, and once complete, I went back with Tamiya flat black and touched up some of the spots that were missed by the rattle can. By the way, I think this paint is 40 years old. Satisfied with the progress so far, I opened the next bag of parts. Separating the parts into bags is almost as good as Lego. I needed a 1/32 brass bar, so I opened the bag of brass and identified the correct one. This is the crosshead assembly. The primary parts here are just the connecting rods, the crossheads, and the wrist pins. I did a quick test fit and then I decided to paint the connecting rods black. Looking at the assembly, I figured many of the parts of a steam engine would be bare metal, but they wouldn't be bright and shiny since this is a used engine. The bare metal would be pretty tarnished, and that gave me an idea. I thought I would try blackening the white metal here since I didn't really want to paint it. I wanted that authentic metal look, and blackening would have worked really well. However, the only blackening solution I had was one for brass. So I tried it, and guess what? It didn't work. If you have a solution for this, I'd be happy to hear the ideas in the comments. For the assembly of the crosshead, I needed to insert the 1/32 brass rod wrist pin through the hole in the side of the crosshead, through the connecting rod, and then through the other side of the crosshead. And after test fitting the 3 components, I declared that the press fit was robust enough as to not need any glue, and thus it was done. I added the piece of brass wire to act as the push rod, and then I glued the first crosshead guide into the frame. With some fiddling, I glued the crosshead in place, and lastly, I wiggled the other guide into the assembly. The 2 frames and cylinders are now complete. With the valve block and crossheads in place, I moved on to the governor assembly. Nothing is more captivating than the centrifugal valve of a steam engine. It is Exhibit A of steampunk. They did a wonderful job with the model of this. I actually gained a deeper understanding of how this piece works mechanically by studying the model. It's pretty impressive that they were able to achieve this level of detail. The governor assembly is about 3/4 of an inch tall and has 8 pieces. It's amazing. I should also mention that it was about here that I decided to start ignoring the recommendation to use 5-minute epoxy. I started using the super glue for everything from here on. Maybe this is not the most intelligent approach, but I'm also not sure that 25 years ago they knew how good super glue would be in 2026. I still didn't have a good solution to my metal look problem. I definitely didn't want to paint my brand new governor assembly, but I also didn't want to leave it the shade of raw white metal. Blackening didn't work, and I considered other options. Then I had another brilliant epiphany. I opened my diluted India ink and dipped the entire fixture right into the mixture. It kind of worked a little, but not quite what I imagined. A good YouTuber would have had a nice before and after shot. The next bag has the steam inlet assembly and the throttle valve. Only 4 parts for the inlet, including a T, which was incredibly tiny, and I begged the gods of luck not to have me drop out into the void below my chair. I think I spent as much time on my knees staring at the floor as I did making this model. But I cut a piece of 3/32 brass about 1 inch long and added the 4 pieces to it to complete the steam inlet assembly. I think one of my favorite details in this kit were the pipe flanges. I started the throttle valve assembly by drilling a couple of holes in the cutoff valve and the throttle valve. I placed the cutoff valve on a piece of 1/32 brass and then a very short piece of 1/16 tubing on the end. Then a flange to the cutoff valve, the 2 flanges to the throttle valve. There's a 4-bolt and a 6-bolt variety, so I need to select and orient them properly. Next, I connect the cutoff valve sub to the throttle valve sub. It's looking like a thing now. Adding another flange and then pre-drilling the hole for the yoke handle. I'm pretty impressed with how sturdy this is. It's intelligently designed. I have to add another small piece of tubing and a flange for the connection to the governor assembly, and a 90-degree elbow on the other end. Here's the 3 assemblies along with an accidental before and after of India ink. The instruction sheet refers to this piece as the pulley. I've always known it as a flywheel. I know there's some overlap, especially when a belt is run directly from it. This one being 8 foot in diameter is pretty big for a pulley. Either way, I will be forever mesmerized by them. They are kinetic energy monsters. I love them. So quiet, peaceful, yet harboring so much chaos. Surprisingly, they're actually coming back into vogue. You might hear them called mechanical batteries. This model suggests that you can display the flywheel as a one-piece casting by gluing the 2 pieces together and omitting the hardware. I liked the idea, but didn't get the impression I could do it convincingly. It can also be presented as a 2-piece wheel that is being transported still assembled in 1 piece. I opted not to go that route either. I ultimately built it exactly as pictured, with the wheel in halves being shipped vertically. I polished these 2 wheel halves for about a half hour each. I also filed and polished the hub fasteners. I chose not to paint them since I had a pretty good technique for making the white metal look like raw grease steel. Oh, I haven't shown you that yet. Anyway, after I thoroughly polished the outer wheel and the inner seam, which I'm sure has a name, I wrapped the 2 halves with Scotch tape and sprayed them with rattle can black. I had to do it twice since I didn't get great coverage the first time. Not the paint's fault. To finish the assembly, I had to superglue 2 hub fasteners and the 2 rim connectors to each half of the wheel. I mentioned that I found a finish that I like for my raw metal components. It's the one I use on everything, burnt umber wash. I use it on everything, but that's a clinic for another day. Recently I found that I like this Vallejo oiled earth wash. It's the right consistency and color, not expensive for this sized bottle, and now I've updated the other pieces with the wash as well, and this wheel, whether a pulley or a flywheel, is the star of the show. I started to try to plan out my arrangement of the load on the flat car. I'm using my Scotia Scale Models flat car. Please go watch video 2 if you'd like to watch the build of that. So this is just bad footage of me finishing the little odds and ends of the kit. But speaking of YouTube, one of my recent rabbit holes is to watch videos about old machinery. I've watched many videos about old stationary steam engines. The first time I saw this kit on eBay, I nearly popped my safety valve. I bid $150 on this tiny little pile of white metal, and I lost the first auction that I tried. I thought I'd perhaps never find one, but as is typical, a few months later someone else parted with one, and I was super pumped to get it. Now I built it. The cranks are not assembled to the crankshaft during transportation. They just look like heavy discs with a journal attached, so I'm sure they're solid steel. So it makes sense that they would separate them to make them easier to move. I painted the side of them black and then sullied them up a bit. The last few bits to assemble are a couple of random pipes with flanges on each end and a couple of shorter ones with a clean out on the end, I think. With all that, I've used up all the metal castings, and I painted the pipe assemblies black and added just a little tint of rust around them. I figured they'd be more likely to rust than the engine itself. They would have oil on and around the engine, but maybe not so much on the piping. And then, of course, I painted the little wheel on the throttle valve red because it just felt right. Once the model is complete, it's time to stage it on the flat car. As mentioned, I fiddled a bit with it earlier to consider arrangements, but simply preferred the original. I began by cutting 2 6x6s, 2 foot long, then adding a notch for the crankshaft to rest. Then I cut 2 8-foot lengths of 6x6 to wedge under the front and back of the pulley halves. I made them long enough so that the two pipe sections could ride adjacent to the wheel. For that, I had to notch those as well. I did the notches with my round diamond file, and then I glued it all down with super glue. I put a 4x4 between the two pulleys to keep them from rubbing against one another. I measured the cranks and built a crate to hold them. Instructions and pictures show additional boards on top of the cranks, which I felt those extra boards obscured them to the point that they were not identifiable, so I omitted those. I added a second set of blocks though, so that the steam inlet pipe could ride comfortably above the cranks. There is a little bit of trial and error with this whole process. Next, I built two crates for the throttle valve and the governor assemblies. The throttle valve was slightly longer and more narrow. The crates were 6 long boards and 6 shorter, and end boards. 10 vertical pieces. So my new chopper arrived exactly 1 day after I finished these. Perfect timing, as always. For this build, I tried a new product, Eileen's Tacky Glue. I've seen it recommended a lot. I wanted to see if it was better than Elmer's. But my impatience is the true loser here, and I started using the 25-second CA again. I thought of a brilliant idea to emulate a sheet or a cloth or something being tossed into the crate to offer a little cushion. I mean, it's what I would do if I was there. I separated a single ply of Kleenex, which then I stained with ink, and I used this sort of as a bed within the crate. But in the end, it kind of looked the same color as the original flat car deck, and without any contrast, your eye doesn't really notice the difference at all. I was struggling to find space for 2 cleanout pipes. I decided to offset one of the frames and angle one of the frames. This would probably be unrealistic, as they would have certainly loaded the frames first and not worried about finding a place for a couple of cleanout pipes. But alas, I'm having fun, I guess. I started laying 8-foot 4x4s on the deck. 4x4s were suggested so that the crew could reach underneath the frames easily, and they would have needed a way to get under them in order to offload them upon arrival. Once I got the 3 boards placed, I arranged the 2 frames and drew a nice center line. I then placed a long 2x4 there, and I began filling in a few other boards to secure the load. Before final placement of the frames, I needed to secure the rods, as without the crank, they were only supported by the crosshead. I needed a block to be under the rod end, a board behind, and a board in front of the connecting rod. I studied the pictures and then cut relatively simple, small scraps. Then I was able to use a bolt casting left over from the pulley to complete the support. Now I can glue the frames in place, and that's everything loaded. All aboard! I had intended to leave all the boards natural, as if they were new, but as is, they were so bright that they were kind of distracting, so I gave the entire load a light wash of diluted India ink. Psst, subscribe to my channel. My final detail was to secure my little sprocket with the supplied chain, but I lost track of it temporarily, and so I just grabbed some A-line links that looked like the appropriate size for HO scale. I knew my stake pockets would be a tight fit, but it would look really good, so I gave the chain a rust wash to help not look so new. I found a piece of thin wire and I threaded it through the first link in the chain. Then I was able to pass the chain through the stake pockets without much difficulty. The first 3 made me overconfident, so then I got the chain stuck on the last one. So, of course, I then broke it. But that's what super glue's for, right? So, I wanted to mention that I'll be submitting this car for evaluation at my local NMRA chapter. I'm working on an achievement called Master Model Railroader. It'll take years, but this car is step number 2. It won't count as a scratch build contribution, but hopefully with the difficulty, the detail, and the finish, it will score highly enough that I can get a merit score. Wish me luck. So there we have it. Santa Clara River Valley Work Train number 31 as a tribute to hockey player Jason Arnott. I should probably have raved about this kit more. It really is a brilliant idea for a model, and Bill designed it very well. It wasn't hard to assemble, the instructions were very clear, and if I had to give grades, it would be an A+ in every category. I'm glad I got to share it with you. I appreciate you watching. Thanks again.